Welcome to St. Joseph Media Network. I'm your host today, Peter Karutz, and we have very special guests. We have Ambassador Michele Bowe, I almost said it right, and we have Mike Heck, who is the Catholic Man of the Year, but I referred to you as an ambassador. So where are you an ambassador from and to?
I serve as the ambassador to Palestine from the Sovereign Order of Malta.
Wow. And we all know what's going on in the world, or shall I say, in the Middle East at this point in time. And you are, via your organization, the Order of Malta, supporting a maternity hospital in Bethlehem, no less, called Holy Family Hospital. How in the world can you do this with all of the competing issues and problems?
Well, we peel away all the layers of the onion until we get right down to what matters, and that's supporting life. We deliver almost 4,000 babies a year, and it just makes it crystal clear what we need to do. We have a foundation in Washington, D.C., and Mike is the chairman of that foundation. And that foundation we use to raise funds, and it was actually Pope John Paul II who suggested that we have such a foundation. And of course, he gave us the hospital to run. And at the same time, we use our foundation to spread the good news of Bethlehem. And there still is good news in Bethlehem. As much as we hear about the wars raging in the area and so many issues, the people in Bethlehem, 90% of the workforce has no salaries. Pilgrimages are closed. Work permits have been rescinded so the people can't work in Jerusalem. There's not a social service safety net from the government, and so families are making their tables longer. The employees at our hospital, each one is probably taking care of 14 or 15 extended family members. And so Holy Family Hospital of Bethlehem is more than just healthcare. It is magnifying hope through, of course, healthcare, but also employment, through training. We are a Catholic teaching hospital with 13 medical residents. We last year trained over 220 nurses and midwives. We're a veritable factory of hope. We have a poverty alleviation program, and it's holistic medicine. If somebody comes in and they have a small medical condition, but maybe they're living with maybe eating less than one meal a day, and how are they going to heal, and how are they going to be spiritually well? Holistic care is care of mind, body, and soul, and that's a hallmark of the Order of Malta. We care for the whole person. It's cura personalis.
Wow. Yeah.
1,500 steps from the manger.
There you go. That's incredible. I do a lot of work with hospitals in crisis, if you will. My daughter used to recruit for nurses, and I know that one of the challenges here in the United States, anyway, is to recruit qualified professionals. I got to imagine that's even more difficult in the part of in Bethlehem. How do you do it?
We know it's so interesting. Bethlehem is a small city. It is where the concentration of Christians live in Palestine, but it's behind a separation wall. And it's not easy to move from one place or another. They can no longer go and easily work in Jerusalem or whatnot. And so Holy Family Hospital has been there for 150 years. We've been running it since 1990, delivered 100,000 babies. And it's a touchstone of the community. I'll have to say, I've been all over the world and have haphazardly met people who were born there, whose mother worked there. And I've had so many taxi drivers try not to take my fare, or people in restaurants trying to bring me another special dessert or something, because their hearts are so warm. They have such a warm affection for the hospital. I once was doing a little fundraiser at my brother's house in Los Angeles, and I showed a little film, and one of the guys who was invited stood up and got so excited. And he's like, "Dr. Salim, that's my pediatrician." He had been born in Bethlehem, and he remembered the pediatrician from Holy Family Hospital. And so normally it is people's first job and their last job, because nobody wants to leave. The Order of Malta is an employer of choice, a good neighbor, and a good corporate citizen. What more could you ask for?
That's incredible. And I imagine a lot of the wherewithal in order to operate this is coming through the foundation, which you're the chairman of. How in the world do you do that?
Well, the question is, how in the world would I be chairman of such a great organization, right? What a privilege. God's been so good to me to give me this opportunity to surround myself with other great board members from across the United States and to look at this and say, okay, what do we do? How are we supposed to respond to this? How do we build friends and build funds to support this, especially in this day and age? We're having to send more and more funds over all the time because of, as Michele said, the lack of economic stability in that part of the world. So our foundation is one of those that helps support the hospital. There's others from other parts of the world that also send funds. But the United States Foundation supports about 60% of the normal revenue needed for the hospital. But we have just increased our subsidies from helping people with about 50% of their cost to now we're up to 85% of the cost of whatever their charges happen to be. We prefer that they have some skin in the game.
Of course.
But now there's no skin to have because there's just no income over there. We will do whatever we need to support these families, to support these babies. We also have been in the midst of a construction project, adding on and renovating, which is obviously more complicated now with getting materials in and out and getting people in and out who can do the right kinds of employment that's necessary to make that happen. But we cover all that construction. And any other ancillary needs that come along, we've basically said we're going to take care of this. So the need to fund all this is dramatic, and we're grateful that people have been very generous. We had a banner year last year in fundraising. Michele and I were just talking about, nervous again for this year, as most charitable organizations are, year after year. But we know that this was where Jesus was born, and every family that comes is another holy family coming into the door. 50% of the women who come in have come in labor, have never had care before that, just like Mary did when she came with Jesus, with Joseph, into Bethlehem. So it's such a magnificent mission that we're proud to support it.
What you make me remember, I was on a plane, I think it was going to South America, and I wound up sitting next to someone who represented Lutheran Charities. And I said, well, what are you doing? How do you, he distributed funds. I said, well, how do you do that? He says, well, I go to Lutheran parishes and I figure out what their need is and we help them out. Catholics do things a little bit differently, don't we?
Although, that's a good segue. We actually get a lot of help from parishes across the country, including Hawaii. We have programs where we will speak at a parish. The kind pastor will give us a few moments at the end of Mass or maybe an evening. Tonight we have a reception at a parish and we're going to talk about the situation. We also have a very easy, simple program which is so helpful, and we call it our Giving Tree program. And we send beautiful tags with pictures of families from Bethlehem who are in need of medical care. They have an envelope attached, and so the pastor just needs to pull together his volunteers, hang them on Christmas trees. People take them,
what a great
and
idea.
They join us in magnifying hope, 1,500 steps from the manger. And, media, we get new donors through radio shows like this, through articles, and just any which way we can to spread the good news. I feel like we're the shepherds, right, who heard the angels sing the Gloria, and they went to go see what the good news was all about. So we know what the good news is all about, and we just want to share it. And we want everybody who's listening to share this good news too. This is a time of the news cycle where we're seeing lots of things that look a little scary or we're just not sure where they're going. One thing is absolute, and that is at Holy Family Hospital, our commitment to life is absolute. And not only does every family have the opportunity to leave the hospital with their baby, but with their dignity intact, because we help them economically. Families who can't contribute a little bit to their health care, our social worker works with them and they can slide it down as much as it needs. And, sometimes the next year they'll come with a few bottles of olive oil or some things, maybe jars of olives, just to say thank you. Everybody loves this touchstone of Bethlehem.
And I'm making a particular emphasis that we're Catholic, and that's why we do it. But I think that something that most people probably don't realize is that the Islam does have certain small connections to us. They love Mary.
They do indeed.
They recognize Jesus as a great prophet. They recognize Jesus as the only birth ever proclaimed. They recognize the virgin birth. So there is a connection there that is in faith as well.
84% of the world's population identify with the faith. And those who identify with the faith are more comfortable accepting help or care from other people of faith. And it doesn't have to be the same faith, but that's one of the reasons why the Order of Malta is so successful in delivering all kinds of care to very hidden away places in the world where others aren't necessarily welcome. And because we're apolitical and we're neutral and we're sovereign, we can go in and we're disinterested in politics, and we are interested in relieving suffering and bringing hope to those who are on the margins. And today, so many more people are on the margins, and to be able to proclaim the good news 2,000 years later, every single day, is what we consider our blessing.
And I'm not a doctor. You're not. We're not physicians. I imagine you're not a nurse. Yeah. And I certainly don't have the time to go spend a year over there, even if I had any skills that I could offer. But in participating, in partnering with the Order of Malta, in some ways we really do, or we really can. We really are.
Yeah, absolutely. You can provide accompaniment and solidarity to the mothers and babies of Bethlehem in so many different ways. Of course, prayers, rosaries, any kind of prayer is so important to pray for peace, hope, and reconciliation. Donations are absolutely necessary. And if we think about it, our faith began in Bethlehem.
Yeah.
And today, to think that there's just about a little less than 6,000 Roman Catholics left in Bethlehem, and there's hundreds of millions of us Catholics all around the world, if each of us just did something to support the population in Bethlehem, they would remain. And the Pope Francis and his Beatitude, Cardinal Pizzaballa, the Patriarch, at Christmas time, they looked right into the eyes of the Catholic community, the Christian community, and said, you have a special commitment to this land. You are tied to this land. It's not easy to stay, and it's a big sacrifice, but this is what you must do. And then I look at us and I think that, maybe had Pope Francis lived a little longer, he would have turned to us and said, that's their sacrifice. How are we in the rest of the world, in the diaspora? How are we helping our original Catholic brothers and sisters? How are we helping them remain in this land that Jesus made holy by his feet?
There's an old story of somebody who confronted Mother Teresa. And she was a woman with a reputation, and she was shaking her finger at Mother Teresa and said, you're judging me. And Mother Teresa just said in her calm, no, I'm not. And she says, yes, you know who I am, what I'm doing. You're judging me. And she said, I'm not, and I can't. Because if I'm loving you, I don't have the time to judge you. I think that's what you're doing over there. There is no judgment. There is no predisposed positions. You're apolitical. You're just there to love them and to help them. And isn't that how you and we all will change the world?
That's how we're called to change the world, right? Just one person at a time, wherever you happen to be. Michelle's been able to get back to Bethlehem periodically, even though it's tenuous at times to do that. But she was just there, in April, I think, just a couple months ago, and you're going back again soon. So all this is live. This is not just somebody sending information. This is directly from her, that she's saying this is the state of affairs today, and it matters. And how can we make a difference? Well, prayer, spreading the good word, doing what you can to support the mission.
And could you give us the website? I mean, a lot of people just can't get on a plane and go, and for a number of reasons, but they could do a virtual tour, can't they?
A virtual pilgrimage through the website, which is birthplaceofhope.org, www.birthplaceofhope.org.
go visit it. Maybe even in reality, visit it, but certainly on the website. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Peter.
And we'll see you next time.